I protect it, man. No, it's the Lakeshore Drive, keep it live, sight raw. You better hurry up, they can't keep
People used to tell me not to rap. Now, if I don't get the best voice and I don't have like this hard image or I don't have a jail record or whatever, so people are saying these are reasons why I can't rap.
Kanye West has always been known as a creative genius, as someone who advanced the music and fashion industries with bold artistic creations.
You know what I don't like about, it's not that I don't like what I need.
But even the most successful celebrities can have colossal collapses. Kanye's story shows us what happens when you take fame too far and you lose it all, and it shows us an important lesson in being able to think beyond just yourself. But before we talk about that, how did he get here? Kanye was born in 1977 in Atlanta, Georgia. Both his mother and father were creative people. His dad, a photographer, and his mom, an English teacher. When Kanye was a kid, he was always really creative. His mom remembered him coloring fruits the wrong color, and she always encouraged that creative expression and being different. You have to wonder whether that push to believe in yourself no matter what set a dangerous precedent that led to the problems that he has now. But there was bigger problems for him to worry about back then. Kanye's dad spent a lot of time on his career, leading his parents to get divorced and Kanye to move to Chicago. Kanye was just 5 years old when he started writing poetry, but even then he knew he could do more. In the third grade, what he wrote transitioned into him rapping, and that quickly became his favorite medium. There was still a lot to learn before Kanye became who he is today, though.
I like this, but you could, but that first line was really good, though.
I walk through the halls of the school, and it's cool to be known by many for my rapping ability. But what about the brothers who ain't got it like me, making money off the trade? You can say I had it made.
At the age of 10, Kanye and Donda moved to Nanjing, China for a year. He was always very focused on school and had good grades the entire way through. At the age of 12, Kanye was gifted $1,000 for his birthday and given the option to spend it however he wanted. He knew right away that he wanted a keyboard and he started using it to produce tracks. The kids he hung out with at that time remembered that bedroom very well. Most kids probably had posters of cars or girls on their wall, but Kanye's room was unique. There were crates of records stacked everywhere.
I had never heard anybody put together beats and rhymes the way that he did even 30 years ago when I met him.
I walked in his crib, and then we ended up starting a production company. After he heard my beats, I heard his beats like, nigga, you sick.
He's always been the best. Always. You just didn't know it yet.
You might not like him now, but there's no denying that he's a creative genius, and it sounds like that's been the case since he was pretty young too. He ended up forming a group with 3 other local rappers called the Go-Getters a few years later, producing music together. They started working out of Donda's home and eventually upgraded to working out of a studio. At that same time, Kanye managed to sell his first ever beat for $8,000. He started to become pretty well known in the music scene in Chicago, and he was building quite a name for himself, but he knew that the big leagues of rapping weren't in Chicago, so he went out to New York to participate in a freestyling event, and it went pretty well.
Seniors will cease the hard looks, however it gets took. Live and die for rhymes dedicated to hip-hop.
This showed Kanye a little taste of greatness, and he knew that he had to start pushing further. That's when Kanye knew that he had to move to New York. He ended up getting a job working at Rockefeller and helping Jay-Z to produce his upcoming album, The Blueprint. Kanye had a lot of influence on guiding The Blueprint, and it's since become known as one of the best hip-hop albums ever made. Kanye knew he could still do more and express more if he could make his own music, but people weren't convinced that he had what it took. Your own worldview, your own opinions, no one else can express those for you. You need to do your own thing to be able to express those.
2 words, Chi-Town raised me crazy, so I live by 2 words, fuck you, pay me. Just slay me. You know I had a game, B. I can't let them change me, cause on Judgment Day, you gon' blame me.
So he started making his own tracks, working to put together an album while fighting an uphill battle to get signed. People thought he wouldn't fit in because he didn't have the gangster vibe of other rappers of the time. But he worked hard to prove himself, and he produced for a ton of super mainstream artists along the way.
Tell me that ain't insecure. The concept of school seems so secure. Sophomore 3 years, ain't picked a career. She like, fuck it, I just stay down her and do it, cause that's enough money to buy her.
Eventually, when they thought that Kanye might leave for another label, Rockefeller ended up signing him in 2002. Now it was time for him to start really getting serious about music. Around this time, he hired Cootie to start documenting his life so he could keep track of things and have a creative partner along the way. He went out to LA to work out of a studio there so he could stay fully focused. But 2 weeks later, the unthinkable happened. After working late at the studio, he fell asleep behind the wheel while driving home. He got into a life-threatening car accident that shattered his jaw in 3 different places. Even in that moment, Kanye knew that this record deal was the biggest moment of his life. Not even having his jaw wired shut could stop him.
You gonna make it, and when you make it, keep the same perspective. Still keep the same hunger, you know what I mean? That hunger is to always be, for that energy to come through, you're gonna always be ill for the rest of your life.
Through the Wire is one of Kanye's most well-known and recognizable songs. He credits that accident as being one of the biggest catalysts in his career because he had no distractions. It was just him focusing on making his album while he was recovering. Through the Wire was an instant hit and it got him a lot of recognition. So over the next year, he continued working on The College Dropout and released it in early 2004.
What you know about Kanye West?
What I know about him?
Here you go, right here. This
I know.
Takeover.
Right.
Here you go, right here.
I know that. I know that JVC, right?
You see that? I know that.
Did you know I just signed Rockefeller
You did?
as a rapper?
No, I ain't know that. Now I do now.
What's up? What's going on with you, man?
His first album was one of the best-selling albums of the year, and he became one of the best-known rappers in the world because of it. But some people think this is where the self-destruction really began.
I do what I do and I like follow my dream. I'm kind of successful at it. This is a beautiful thing. I can say whatever I want. People just look at it like, oh, he's an artist. It's all okay, you know what I'm saying?
Over the next decade, he continued cementing his place in history by putting out track and album after album that did better and better each time.
Even though the drums ain't right, I still think I want to get the drums right and get the shit knocking, you know, for the step set.
See, my thing is, I can beef it up right now, and you're gonna go crazy.
I'ma bring the cool whip, then I want you to strip. My concept for this song, right? They gonna say, the girl gonna be like, feel like where you going with this concept and all this rapping, but sometimes I just need some slow shit. I just need some dust.
Along the way, he made ventures into other industries as well, especially fashion. So Kanye is vastly misunderstood because of how he sees the world, but that doesn't mean that he isn't incredibly talented. 21 Grammy Awards, 9 platinum albums, and 21 million records sold is no feat to scoff at. Not to mention that his Yeezy brand was estimated to be worth nearly $5 billion at its peak.
I rock with anything he does. That man's a genius. I'm a musician, so I get it differently. It's a difference between hearing and listening. I listen to all music.
Yeah, he turned the hotel we were staying into, which is my favorite place to stay, he turned it into like a easy compound, like, you know what I'm saying? He was designing sneakers in one suite, designing stuff in another, making music in one suite, and I was making music in my suite. It was crazy.
You can't retire a creative genius, man. You retire Steve Jobs, we all gonna be phoneless, man.
So how does someone who's so respected and loved become so hated? This is the beginning of the story of Kanye's self-destruction arc. Before we actually talk about why he sabotaged himself, let's look at what happened, starting with the VMAs in 2009.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Honestly, this clip comes right back to his belief that he can say and do whatever he wants. It's just a bold, attention-grabbing move, but it's nothing in comparison to what was to come down the line. Now, he's been critical of things like abortion and made religion a big part of his identity, but there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's an opinion that people don't like, but here's the thing. This is an opinion and a personal trait, so you really can't do much about it, but it did alienate a certain part of his audience, something that at the time was totally fine for for him because he got a lot more people who supported him even more thoroughly because of it. But then he started going on rants on Twitter over the next few years, leading to one that started to paint him in a very bad light. While Bill Cosby was on trial, he tweeted things like Bill Cosby innocent despite astounding amounts of evidence the other way. But a lot changed for Kanye in 2016. While in Paris for Fashion Week, his then wife, Kim Kardashian, was robbed at gunpoint in her hotel room. Soon after, fans noticed that a lot of his performances on his St. Pablo tour were turning into rants, and people started getting concerned. These rants included calling out Jay-Z, criticizing Hillary Clinton, and showing an express amount of support for Trump. On top of that, his all-too-public divorce from Kim Kardashian a few years later led to a public image of someone who was pretty unpredictable. But to be fair, none of that compares to how poorly he's treated people in the last year. In October of last year, after ending his partnership with Gap, Kanye showed up to Paris Fashion Week wearing a shirt that read, "White Lives Matter." Later on, he appeared with Candace Owens, a controversial right-wing political commentator who was also wearing the same shirt with him. At this point, he had a decision. Either he could double down or back off, and he didn't just double down, he quadrupled down, calling out artists that were supposedly being controlled by Jewish people and saying that he would, quote, go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. Most people assumed he was talking about DEFCON, which is a disaster response system, and it's a pretty serious thing to say something like that. Several brands from Adidas to Vogue to Balenciaga, they all cut their ties with Kanye at this point. Sadly, this was still only the beginning. From associating with Nick Fuentes, a public white supremacist and neo-Nazi, to going on Alex Jones's show to talk about the supposed good things that Hitler did, he really shot himself in the foot, and he really made big mistakes with what he was saying. The thing you need to consider is that in this conversation, Alex Jones was the reasonable one. Alex Jones, who has faced fines and been sued for the things he said and the actions he's taken, he was the reasonable one here. Once clips showing his outrageously hateful beliefs started to spread all over social media, he tweeted a Star of David with a swastika showing public support for Nazism. This made him the first person to get removed from Elon Musk's new Twitter. And what he did was entirely disgusting. You have to ask yourself, why did he do this, and why was this even reasonable to him? How do you get to this point? It all comes back to that clip where he said he can say whatever he wants because he's famous. When he did things like the VMA incident, he was doubling down on being the bad guy and getting the attention for being the bad guy, and it worked, and he wanted more of it. Throughout his entire career, being more controversial, more disruptive, and more public has only benefited him. But in this case, Kanye lost sight of where that boundary was, and he took it so far that it just isn't recoverable at this point. Celebrities like to share their beliefs and opinions, and in a lot of cases, this can build trust with certain sectors of their audience. But maybe free ability to say whatever you want has negative consequences, but people don't seem to recognize this. The biggest takeaway from this is that the biggest geniuses have dark sides and blind spots. So if you blindly follow someone and everything that they say, you are setting yourself up for failure. You need to protect your unique mind and beliefs, and you need to be able to corroborate things that people are saying, because at what point does one celebrity losing their boundary mean that you now have a hateful belief? Be cautious of what you see online and take everything with a grain of salt, because you never know when someone's going to take it way too far. This video was super interesting for me to put together, and I really enjoyed making it. So if you liked it as well, please subscribe down below. I've got another awesome video coming next week. And while you're waiting, you should check out this video I made here about the fast food system and how it's literally designed to keep you addicted. All right, see you guys next week. Snackies, anyone?